is last, you realize the sun doesn't go down. It's just an illusion caused by the world spinning round. Do you realize? In the valley, oh God, be near. In the quiet, oh God, be near. In the shadow, oh God, be near. At my breaking, oh God, be near. Oh God, don't ever leave my side. Your love stand firm for all my life. My searching, oh God, be near. In my wandering, oh God, be near. When I feel alone, oh God, be near. At my lowest, oh God, be near. Oh God, don't ever leave my side. Your love stand firm for all my life. Depth nor anything else could pull us apart. We are joined as one by your blood. Hope will rise as we become more than conquerors through the one who loved the world. Joined as one by your blood. Hope will rise as we become more than conquerors through the one who loved the world.
Woo! Wow. Can we just listen to that again and I'll not do the intro? Good morning, Catalyst. My name is Tim Baslin. I've been on the preaching team here for a couple of years now. I also teach at Dallas Theological Seminary, and I usually begin my classes with some sort of devotional. We sometimes pray for one another. We sometimes look at a piece of art or read a poem together. In choosing a devotional, I try to think about where my students are. Maybe they're feeling pressure at the end of a semester, or maybe something is occupying our cultural imagination, like at the beginning of this semester when it was hurricanes. I try to create a space where we can slow down, remember those that are hurting, and at least speak something about the tragedy. Sometimes, though, something more happens. Like 2.5 years ago, when I pulled up a couple of news stories to start class, just to talk about the facts from the weekend. As I began to list some details, 21 Coptic Christians kneeling on a beach in Libya, executioners standing behind them with swords, I began to weep. I'd been reading about this for a few days. I'd been praying for the families affected and for the Coptic Church. But suddenly, speaking it aloud in my class, these kneeling men became my brothers, and I began to lament. This lamenting meant a couple of things. First, it was a dignifying of their humanity as well as a return of mine. It's very difficult in an age of constant news to feel the humanity of disasters or evil actions around the world. We're not built for constant grief. But this weeping also meant that I had some difficult questions for God. These 21 faithfully serving, choosing death over a denial of Christ, and yet it seemed like God was denying them. Is this the kind of God I wanted to serve? Today we're introducing a new series on lament. Maybe you've had times where you've experienced disasters in your life and questioned God. Or maybe you've avoided some very difficult questions because you feel like if you start to ask that one question, everything's just going to begin to unravel. If so, you're not alone. We've built a society, and too often a religion, that tries to avoid pain at all costs. As we'll learn today, though, lament is good. It's the path to healing and hope. So I invite you to join us as we begin to learn how to lament.
Welcome to stand with us as we continue singing. The one thing about lament is it is unfamiliar territory. So we have a group of songs that we're going to be singing over the next few weeks that are probably pretty unfamiliar to everyone. That's okay. Not really trying to make you feel uncomfortable, but maybe I am just a little bit. But if you don't know it, that's okay. Just sit in the music as we're going to hear later about sitting in the pain, and it'll come to you, and just feel it until then.
Like the rushing wind, would you breathe within my heart? Through the raging storm, would you hold me in your arms? 'Cause I need you. How I need you. I need your love like I need water. I need your love like I need breath inside of my lungs, burning my heart just like a fire. Come and take me over, Jesus, draw me closer to your heart. can hear you call my name. And when the night gets rough, I will still sing out your praise, 'cause I need you. How I need you. I need your love like I need water. I need your love like I need breath inside of my lungs, burning my heart just like a fire. Come and take me over, Jesus, draw me closer to your heart, to your heart, to your heart. Closer than my every breath, closer than my every step, you're closer than the song I sing, closer than anything, closer than my every breath, closer than my every step, closer than the song I sing, you're closer than anything. I need your love like I need water. I need your love like I need breath inside of my lungs, burning my heart just like a fire. Come and take me over, Jesus, draw me closer. Let's do that one more time. I need your love like I need water. I need your love like I need breath inside of my lungs, burning my heart just like a fire. Come and take me over, Jesus, draw me closer to your heart, to your heart, your heart. Your heart, your heart, Jesus, draw me closer to your heart. As I came to the edge of the woods, thrush music, hark. Now if it was dusk outside, inside it was dark. Too dark in the woods for a bird by sleight of wing to better its perch for the night, though it still could sing. The last of the light of the sun that had died in the west still lived for one song more in a thrush's breast. Far in the pillared dark, thrush music went, almost like a call to come into the dark and lament. But no, I was out for stars. I would not come in. I meant not have even if asked, and I hadn't been.
Oh, the vapor of it all. It's the chasing of the wind, the substance of the form, so pale and thin. can feel it from within. The beauty of it all, the mystery, the swelling of a voice, a rising sea. Holy, oh, behold the holy. Trees clap their hands for you, oceans they dance for you. You are holy, infinite and holy. A billion suns rise for you, clouds paint the skies for you, mountains stand tall for you, valleys bow down to you, everything rises to sing all our songs for you.
Holy, the impossible and holy. Kings become fools for you, kingdoms to ruins for you. Vapor finds ground in you, music finds sound for you. Everything rising, everything rising, everything rising, everything rising, everything rising. Sing. Let's pray together. Father, we confess, we recognize, we declare this morning that you are holy. You are God and we are not. Lord, and we place our trust in you. We place our trust in your ways and in your word. Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to join our voices together as one body here at Catalyst to give you the glory that you are so unbelievably deserving of. Lord, now as we move into this time together, help us to posture ourselves in a way that our hearts and our minds are open to the truth that you would have for us. Lord, we recognize that as glorious and beautiful as life can be, it can also be equally painful and tragic. Lord, so I ask that you'd help us to be brave, to be courageous, Lord, to make the decision to sit in those moments of pain, to hear what is screaming out, to hear what we are meant to hear, how we can learn from these things and carry them on to better our world, to bring the light and love that you provided for us to everyone. We love you, Father. We ask all these things in the name of your Son, Jesus, by the power of your Spirit. Amen.
You can be seated. My name's Tommy. I'm the youth pastor here at Catalyst. And I wanted to take a moment. I hope you grabbed one of these on your way in. This is the Beaker Mini. Anything with the beaker on it means information. This is the best way that we found to communicate to you what's going on in the church. So I just wanted to take a moment to point out a few things. The biggest thing we got, not biggest thing, but one of the biggest things we got going on is October 28th. We need some help. So whether you can donate a trunk, donate candy, donate time, helping out manning a bounce house, whatever you can do to help us out to make a safe space for the children in our community to come get candy, we'd appreciate your help. And then last thing, tonight at the church, Synthesis, our teen group, is putting on a murder mystery night. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We have food. We have a lot of fun characters to introduce you to. And we hope you come out and join us and have some fun. But we're going to take a moment. Like I said, we have the tear off. So leave any information you're comfortable with giving us. If you have a prayer request or if you have something, just check the box there and drop it in the box on your way out. But we're going to take a moment and do the tear off because it makes a really cool sound. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. All right. And that sound means it's time for kids to go to the lab where they're going to learn. The world through us. So take a moment and pass peace with your neighbor.
There we go. Good morning again. We have had a lot of pain in our country over the last couple of months in particular. We saw hate marching in the streets of Charlottesville and then driving a car into a crowd of people. Then there was Harvey in Houston, Irma in Florida, Maria in Puerto Rico, the shooting in Vegas, now fires in California. Some of us have been more connected to different parts of these tragedies than others, but many of us have grieved in some way. And our grieving is often very lonely, isn't it? How can someone else really understand your particular hurt? I remember after a 9/11, we were encouraged to go shopping. Now, I understand the reasoning because Al-Qaeda was trying to disrupt our financial systems. So we saw shopping as an act of defiance against them, trying to get back to the American way. But how does one mourn while shopping? How does one hurt or heal when there's an emphasis on the fastest way to just move on, to get back to normal, to the way things used to be? And furthermore, what if your particular tragedy, there is no real way to get back to normal? They can never be as they were. We have a similar problem in our Christian culture. We tend to pass over trauma quickly, try to get back to normal. This begins by ignoring our pain. The taglines of two of the largest Christian radio stations in America are K-Love's simple, positive, encouraging music, and Air One's even more simple, positive hits. Last time I checked, though, being positive wasn't one of the fruits of the Spirit. Yet, many Christians seem to think that the goal of the Christian faith is to be able to wear that #blessed t-shirt all the time. As if when positivity is the doorkeeper, there's not really much space for lament or even for acknowledging our pain or anything complicated, really. Sometimes I turn to one of these positive Christian radio stations because I'm just happen to be in the mood for it, but I very quickly grow weary of it because, well, it's kind of like eating cotton candy all day. Our churches have also drank the Kool-Aid. We've learned what keeps people coming back, at least in this society. Don't offend, don't be a downer, all messages, all songs should be positive, encouraging. I'm thankful for a teaching pastor, JR, who risks the truth of pain. For a worship leader, as we just heard, pick songs that call us to hope, but that also allow us to hurt. There are two books of the Bible in particular that say a lot about lament. One is the book of Lamentations, which we'll be focusing on for much of this series. But today I'd like to begin with the book of Psalms, which contains 150 songs that were mostly sung in community. Imagine with me, if you will, ancient Israel and the setting of the temple where most of these songs were sung. Some psalms were sung when a new king was inaugurated. Some were sung as the people of Israel walked up the hill towards Zion, bring their sacrifices to the temple. But the largest single group of psalms is about 1/3 of them are lament psalms. Lament psalms were an invitation for the people to express their grief, their sorrow. The people lived very difficult times, very difficult lives where death was common. Lament songs allowed them to mourn and to question. If all their music was just positive and encouraging, their religion wouldn't have much to do with their actual lives. It'd be very disconnected. Their lives where their crops failed, or a family member died, or children died, which was very common. Of course, difficulty is not unique to ancient Israel. We all face difficulty regularly. In fact, despite all of our medicines and our hospitals, none of us are yet immune from death, right? I'd say there's probably about 1/3 of my life that does not fall into the categories of positive and encouraging, no matter how hard I try to make them fit. Lament allows us to acknowledge that pain, to put it into a larger perspective so that we can heal. Today we're going to look at one of those psalms in particular, Psalm 77, and see what the movement from grief to healing looks like. I learned to look carefully at Psalm 77 from one of my favorite Old Testament theologians, Walter Brueggemann. He understands theology, just in general, to work in a circle of what he calls orientation, disorientation, reorientation, and we just kind of keep going around that. He says theology occurs when we're going about our normal lives, our normal orientation to the world, and then something happens. Something goes wrong. So the day I did devotions about the Coptic Christians, I was kind of going through the motions, doing what I normally do, which isn't necessarily bad or unspiritual, but suddenly this story disrupted my normal routines and even began asking questions of my understanding of God. I moved from orientation to disorientation. God wasn't acting as I thought God should act, and I had to confront my understanding of who God is. Maybe you know what I'm talking about because you've a recent tragedy in your life, or a lost job, or an end of a relationship. We all experience these disruptions where we begin to question God's goodness, and that's called theology. It's normal. We all do it. If we do it well, we come to know God more fully, to grow in our relationship with God. And Brueggemann says that a big part of how that growth occurs is through us being disoriented from the way we currently know God. It's in this cycle of orientation, disorientation, and then reorientation that faith is able to grow. For it's in the disorientation that we have the possibility of learning to trust God, and we then are able to be reoriented with God in new and more profound ways. So let's look at Psalm 77 and see how this works. I'm going to read out of the NRSV translation of the Bible, and I'll tell you why shortly. So pay attention in this first part, the first 6 verses, to the psalmist's use of I, my, and me. Verse 1. I cry aloud to God, that he may hear me. In the day of my trouble I seek the Lord. In the night my hand is stretched out without wearying. My soul refuses to be comforted. I think of God and I moan. I meditate and my spirit faints. You keep my eyelids from closing. I am so troubled that I cannot speak. I consider the days of old and I remember the years of long ago. I commune with my spirit. I commune with my heart in the night. I meditate and search my spirit. Oh, in case you weren't counting, there's about 18 times in those first 6 verses. 18 I's, my's, and me's. Self-obsessed much? But that's okay. The psalmist is grieving. And we're all self-obsessed when we're hurting. And it's okay to do that. It's included here in this psalm, and there's a place in Christianity and at this church for you to hurt. Now, in verse 7, a change is made in the tone. The psalmist begins to question God. But although the psalmist is now addressing God, he's attempting to bring God into the orbit of his own pain. You could say he's trying to bring God down to his level. Let's read the next few verses. Will the Lord spurn forever and never again be favorable? Has his steadfast love ceased forever? Are his promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his compassion? Those are some tough questions. They're certainly not positive and encouraging. Many of us have likely been told not to ask these types of questions when we're hurting. We've been told to just believe our way through it, to not doubt, because doubt shows we don't trust God. But that's simply not true. If I have questions about my relationship with my wife, if we're struggling through something, it doesn't mean I don't trust her. It means we have some stuff to work out. And it's actually in that working out of stuff that we become closer, and I learn to trust Robin more. This psalm reminds us that it's okay to ask tough questions of God and even to be angry with God. Most of the book of Job is asking tough questions of God. Most of the lament psalms ask these types of questions and even express anger. There's a place in Christianity in this church for you to ask tough questions of God. Now, verse 10. It's the linchpin of the whole psalm. Everything turns on this one verse. And I say, it is my grief that the right hand of the Most High has changed. Wow. That is quite the accusation. And you notice it's no longer a question. The psalmist does not ask if God has changed. He states, God has changed. This is difficult. Our religion is more comfortable with a God that does not change. In fact, this is so problematic that few of the hundreds of different translations of the Bible actually translate this verse literally like the NRSV does. For example, here's what the most popular translation, the NIV, says. Then I thought, to this I will appeal, the years when the Most High stretched out his right hand. Talk about putting a positive spin on a statement. For the Hebrews, God's right hand is his power, his hand of power and action. And that's what we tend to do, what we tend to think about when our faith is only being positive. We just start trying to remember the good things and hoping for those things again. We have no ability to face and to name the bad stuff. You see, it's risky business to truly lament because true lament asks questions of God and challenges our understandings of God. Lament sometimes accuses God of being in the wrong, of changing the rules of the game on us. This makes our religious systems uncomfortable. Even our translations of the Bible get scared. But you know what? God is not scared. Go ahead and question. Question God. The Bible's full of people having questions for God. In fact, the night before Jesus' death, he was in the Garden of Gethsemane. He was questioning God's way, asking if there was a different one he could take. And then on the cross, he cries out from a lament psalm, Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you forsaken me? Have you ever felt that way? Has your soul ever cried out to God with this question? If so, you're in good company, the psalmist and Jesus. I'm focusing on this point because whatever else lament may be, it has to at least be honest questioning that does not skip over or try to avoid our real pain. And we're so very good at hiding our real pain, aren't we? Even from ourselves. So for you, being honest with your pain may mean some crying out before God, letting God have a piece of your mind. It may mean more digging than that. It may require work with a therapist to help you uncover the pain you've been told to cover up all of your life. The pain you can't really even see, but it's wreaking havoc in unexpected ways. Hopefully, as we walk through this series in the next month, you'll find the courage to be more honest with your pain. So what difference does it make? Isn't lament really just self-pity? How is this important? Let's see what happens in the remainder of Psalm 77. Here's a clue. The I's and my's all but disappear and are replaced by you's and yours. I will call to mind the deeds of the Lord, verse 11. I will remember your wonders of old. I will meditate on all your work and muse on your mighty deeds. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is so great as our God? You are the God who works wonders. You have displayed your might among the peoples. With your strong arm you redeemed your people, the descendants of Jacob and Joseph. When the waters saw you, O God, when the waters saw you, they were afraid. The very deep trembled. The clouds poured out water. The skies thundered. Your arrows flashed on every side. The crash of your thunder was in the whirlwind. Your lightnings lit up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your way was through the sea, your path through the mighty waters. Yet your footprints were unseen. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Did you count the yous and yours? There's about 20 of them, about the same amount of the I's and me's and my's in the first half of the psalm. I find that interesting. Brueggemann says of this second half, nothing has been resolved, but everything has been recontextualized. It's true that lament does not just solve our problems, but it's the moment of honesty, of questioning, that God can come and be present, and we can begin to experience more of who God is. After I have a fight with Robin, when it gets resolved, especially a difficult one, I'm often overwhelmed with gratefulness for who she is, her willingness to walk with me through past difficulties, as well as the anger and frustration of the fight we are currently having. And I come to know her more. I learn how far her grace is willing to reach into my soul and help me heal and become a better person. And I'm trying not to look at her right now so I don't start crying. The new picture at the end of Psalm 77 is a picture of God leading his people out of Egypt by the hand of Moses and Aaron, leading them out of slavery through the parted waters of the Red Sea. In the ancient Near East culture, the oceans were understandably very scary. Storms couldn't be predicted, so anything could happen if you set sail on the sea. In many cultures' origin stories, like Gilgamesh, which my daughter Risa is currently reading for 10th grade, the waters are the source of chaos and the world's evils. When we consider Harvey and Irma and Maria, we can see how true their thinking was. In contrast to other cultures' views, though, verse 16 says, when the waters saw you, O Lord, they were afraid. Even more interesting, verse 19 says that God's way is through the sea, through the mighty waters. God is not afraid of the chaotic waters of your life. In fact, they become God's path for you to escape slavery. The verse goes on to say, and yet God's footprints were unseen. I find that to be so beautiful and true. When the Red Sea was parted, they didn't find God's footprints there in the mud. I don't really have words to express what this means to me, but God doesn't show up and give us no choice but to believe. God is present in the waters, in the chaos, and God acts and God delivers, and he asks that we recognize his movement and witness his salvation. This is how faith is created and developed. Not by God overpowering everything and showing off, but by God being there for us and inviting us into relationship. In explaining the way lament operates in the cycle of orientation, disorientation, reorientation, Brueggemann writes that for the Bible, disorientation is not viewed as a faceless situation nor a passage, but as a trouble in the relationship. I think we too often see our problems as faceless situations. as difficult passages meant to make us stronger, as hurdles to get over. Brueggemann suggests the writers of the Bible see tragedy and trauma differently in terms of relational difficulty. Now, we understand this when we think about blessings. We understand blessings in a relational way. They give us good feelings about who God is. But do we see troubles in our lives relationally as well, calling into question God's way in the world? What if we did? The first time I did enough to make my wife yell at me, I curled up in the fetal position in the corner of our tiny apartment. I didn't know what to do. In my family growing up, we did not yell at one another. When she yelled at me, what it meant for me was that whatever problem we were having, and I don't remember what we were talking about, but it meant for me that she thought that problem was more important than I am. But Robin taught me that our relationship was always going to be stronger than whatever disagreements we would have, and that our honesty with one another was actually the closest intimacy. We've now been married for 18 and a half years, and it's often been in our arguments that we've truly found out who we are and how deep our love is. It's been in my greatest moments of weakness that Robin has been able to be there for me and show me the depth of her love that extends beyond my greatest screw-ups. What if we stopped ignoring all the bad stuff in our lives, trying to sweep it under the rug, act like it didn't exist, try to just be positive? What if instead we lamented honestly before God and gave God the opportunity to answer our cries, to be there for us, to love us in ways we've never even imagined possible? What if we learned to lament in our relationships as well, both being honest about our pain, but also providing space for others to be honest about their pain without holding over them the threat of a loss of a relationship? For the next 6 weeks, we want to invite you to be honest with yourself, with your church family, and with God. We're going to work through the book of Lamentations. It's a collection of poetry that reflects on the exile, which was the worst, most terrible event in the history of God's people. We're going to let the book of Lamentations teach us how to lament together. We're going to learn how to be honest about our disorientation as we trust God to reorient our relationships. Mostly, we're going to focus on what the process of lament looks like on the ground on a personal level. But the book of Lamentations is also about cultural lament. As we learn to lament on an individual level, Lamentations also invites us to lament as a people, as a culture. And so at the end of the series, we're going to come together on the evening of Sunday, December 3rd, to talk about one of the most divisive, painful issues in our culture, race, and our need for lament. Over the last couple of years, our culture has again experienced disorientation in relation to race. We're recognizing that something is deeply wrong, and there's a temptation for a lot of us to go backwards, to try to get back to that previous state of orientation, to ignore what's causing the disorientation. But we can learn from Lamentations how to lament our racial history together and become a holy voice in our culture, calling our nation to a place of justice, a reorientation in God's way of flourishing for all people. At the end of Lamentations, we will find that lament happens best in community. It's not a lone wolf thing that individuals must figure out and do before being able to re-enter into society. No, lament, when done well, is communal. It is something we figure out together and help each other through. Which brings us to communion. Communion is the most ancient, the most true, the most communal lament. Together, we face the brokenness of a world that would crucify a pure soul, and we lament. We lament our broken world. We lament our participation in Christ's crucifixion. We lament that we have been broken and in need of salvation. We lament that we continue to participate in systems of evil and continue to need salvation. And we confess that Christ's death and resurrection is our only hope. And somehow, in this lament, we are offered salvation and resurrection life. We move from a focus on I, me, myself, to a focus on God. You do not need to be a member here in order to participate in communion. If you feel the need to lament for our world and the need for something bigger than yourself to heal our world's wounds, you're welcome to join us as we practice Jesus' death and resurrection as the answer to this world's pain. But before communion, I'd like it to lead us in a prayer of examine. This is an exercise that helps us make a little space, a little room for our feelings and our thoughts. I'm going to ask 4 questions and leave about a minute for silence after each one. First question. What in your life this last week has needed lament? What kind of questions do you have for those that hurt you and for God? What in your life has needed lament for a long time? What questions do you have for God about that hurt? Let us pray together and then we'll take communion together. Lord, today, as we sit with the pain of our very broken world, we feel forsaken. And we ask, why have you forsaken us? We are hurting today. We hurt for friends and loved ones and people created in your image who have been devastated by Harvey, Irma, Maria, mass shootings, white supremacy, sexual harassment, uncontrolled fires. How long, O God? How long? How long until you come and make all things new? How long until we recognize our sin and take responsibility and make changes? How long until we begin to fight for what is good? Forgive us, Lord. And come. Come and heal us. Come today as we take communion together. Come be with us as we confess that you are our only hope. We ask that these wafers and juice become a spiritual food that changes us by your grace. Open our eyes to see you at work, you going before us, you healing the nations, you inviting us into deeper relationship. Amen.
All right, you're welcome to stand as we sing one last song together.
This fainted heart, take these tainted hands, wash me in your love, come like grace again. Even when my strength is lost, I'll praise you. Even when I have no song, I'll praise you. Even when it's hard to find the words louder than I'll sing your praise. I will only sing your praise. Take this mountain weight, take these ocean tears, hold me through the trial, come like hope again. Even when the fight seems lost, I'll praise you. Even when
Thank you to any guests that have joined us today and for all those supporting Catalyst. If you are a guest, we know it can be hard to get connected to a new church, so we created something called a Newcomer's Lunch. It's only about 45 minutes. We feed you, tell you about Catalyst. The next one's on November 12th. If you're interested, you can check a little box and on the form that we tore off earlier and put it in that box by the back door. Now, Catalyst, as you go forth today, walk into a broken world with the truth that you love a God whose love for you runs deeper than any pain, any brokenness you may experience. Runs deeper than any pain, any brokenness you may have hidden in your life. Runs deeper than any pain or brokenness you may encounter in this big broken world. And know that God will meet you even in the darkest places and will provide a way to freedom. Go in peace.